Breaking news from the palace walls. And what I'm about to tell you isn't speculation. It isn't rumor. It isn't something that might happen someday. This has already happened. King Charles has made his decision. The rules have been changed. And Archie and Lilibet have been effectively removed from any meaningful place in the royal succession. King Charles just signed off on a brand new rule, one that will change the future of the royal family forever. The rule is simple, but its impact hit like an earthquake. Any child who wants to stay in the royal line of succession must be raised full-time in the United Kingdom under direct royal supervision. No exceptions. No shortcuts. No special treatment. Can you imagine what that sentence means? It means that geography matters. That physical presence in the UK matters. That being part of the day-to-day life of the monarchy matters. That you can't claim royal status while living 5,000 miles away and having no connection to the institution. And the moment that rule was revealed, everyone knew exactly who it affected first: Archie and Lilibet. Harry and Meghan's two children, born and raised thousands of miles away in California, instantly fell outside the requirement. They have never attended royal traditions, never lived inside the palace structure, never participated in royal events. They have no real connection to day-to-day royal life beyond the bloodline they inherited from their father. Inside royal circles, sources whispered that this wasn't just a routine update. This was a message. A deliberate, calculated message that the monarchy was moving on. That the next generation, or at least some of it, would be chosen carefully based on who actually participates in royal life, not just who happens to be born into it. And for Meghan Markle, this hit deeper than anyone else. Because for her, this wasn't just about titles or protocol. This was about belonging, about recognition, about making sure her children were seen as part of the story she believed they deserved to inherit, about maintaining the royal connection that's the only thing making her relevant. But this rule told her something she never expected to hear so plainly. The monarchy decides who belongs. Not her, not Harry, not public sympathy or media narratives. The institution itself decides. And it has decided that children raised in California with no connection to royal life don't belong in the succession. And this was only the beginning. Can you imagine being Meghan right now? Everything you've tried to build, the royal brand, the Duchess identity, the claim that your children are raising royal heirs, all of it invalidated by a single rule change that everyone knows was written specifically to exclude you. Tonight, we're going to examine the series of devastating moves King Charles and Prince William have made to permanently remove the Sussex children from meaningful royal status. The geographic requirement that makes California residents disqualifying. The working royal requirement that excludes children of people who've stepped back. The formal clarity review examining every detail of Archie and Lilibet's births. And Meghan's desperate plan to fight back through legal action that could expose everything she's been hiding. This is about power. Real institutional power. The kind that doesn't need to be loud or angry or dramatic. The kind that simply changes the rules and watches as people who violated those rules find themselves automatically excluded. So before we dive into the specific rule changes, before we examine William's role in hardening the monarchy's position, before we look at Meghan's legal strategy that could backfire spectacularly, I need you to understand what's really happening. The monarchy is cleaning house. It's removing uncertainty. It's creating clear requirements that protect legitimate succession. And in doing so, it's eliminating the Sussex children from any meaningful royal future. Not as punishment. Not as revenge. But as the inevitable consequence of their parents' choices. Let's begin with the first rule change, the one that makes Archie and Lilibet's California residence permanently disqualifying. The first rule King Charles implemented is devastatingly simple. Any child who wants to remain in the royal line of succession must be raised full-time in the United Kingdom under direct royal supervision. Let me break down why this requirement is so perfectly designed to exclude the Sussex children while seeming completely reasonable. This means not just visiting occasionally, not spending summers in England, not showing up for weddings and funerals. Full-time, permanent residence in the United Kingdom. Can you see why this matters? Because royal children need to be raised understanding British culture, British institutions, British traditions. They need to attend British schools, participate in British society, live as British citizens with deep connection to the country they might someday represent. Archie and Lilibet have never lived in the UK full-time. They were born in different countries, one in the UK, one in the US, but both have been raised exclusively in California. They have no meaningful connection to Britain. They speak with American accents. They're being raised in American culture with American values. And King Charles has made clear, that's disqualifying. You cannot represent the British monarchy if you're not actually British in any meaningful sense. This is even more devastating to the Sussex position, because it means that children in the succession need to be raised not just in the UK, but under the guidance and oversight of the royal family itself. This ensures that royal children are taught appropriate behavior, royal protocol, institutional values, and the responsibilities that come with their position. It prevents parents from raising royal children with attitudes or values that contradict what the institution represents. Can you imagine how directly this targets Harry and Meghan? They've made abundantly clear that they don't want to follow royal protocol, that they reject institutional values, that they're raising their children with different priorities than the monarchy represents. And King Charles has essentially said, fine, raise them however you want. But if they're not being raised as royal children under royal guidance, they don't get to claim royal status. Here's what makes this requirement so brilliant from a legal and constitutional perspective. It's completely defensible. The monarchy isn't saying we don't like Harry and Meghan, so their kids are out. That would be personal and potentially challengeable. Instead, they're saying royal children must be raised in the UK under royal supervision, and any children who don't meet that requirement are automatically excluded. That's a neutral, objective standard that applies to everyone equally. It just happens that the only royal children currently not meeting that standard are Archie and Lilibet. Can you see the genius of this approach? Meghan can't claim it's targeted at her specifically because it's written as a general rule. But everyone knows exactly who it's designed to exclude. The monarchy has precedent for this kind of requirement. Historically, royal children have always been raised in the UK or in Commonwealth realms under royal supervision. The idea that you could raise royal children in a foreign country with no connection to the institution and still expect them to hold succession rights is actually the aberration, not the norm. So King Charles isn't inventing new restrictions. He's actually just formalizing what has always been the practical requirement, that royal children be raised as part of the royal family, not as private citizens living abroad. The moment this rule took effect, Archie and Lilibet were automatically excluded from meaningful consideration in the succession. They technically remain in the line by blood, but they're now flagged as not meeting residential requirements for active succession status. What does this mean practically? They won't be included in official succession planning documents sent to Commonwealth governments. They won't be considered when calculating who needs security or official support. They won't be factored into constitutional discussions about the line of succession. They exist in the line only as a technicality, biological descendants of a royal who don't actually meet the requirements for succession consideration. Can you imagine being Meghan and Harry, realizing that this single rule has made your children irrelevant to the institution you spent years attacking while still trying to claim connection to? Why Meghan can't just move back? The obvious solution would be for Harry and Meghan to move back to the UK with the children to meet the requirement. But that's impossible for several reasons. 1. Meghan's entire brand is built on California life and escaping the oppressive British monarchy. Moving back would be admitting her entire narrative was wrong. 2. The rule requires direct royal supervision, which means the palace would have oversight of how the children are raised. Meghan would lose the control she currently has. 3. Harry and Meghan are no longer welcome in royal residences. Where would they even live if they moved back? 4. Meghan has no intention of ever living in the UK again. Sources make clear she views California as permanent home. So the Sussex children are permanently locked out of meeting this requirement because their mother refuses to comply with it. Let me ask you, is King Charles being unreasonably harsh? Or is he simply establishing sensible requirements that protect the institution from people who want the benefits of royal status without any of the responsibilities? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because we're about to examine the second rule change, The one that makes Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties permanently disqualifying for their children. When we come back, we're looking at the working royal requirement and why it's even more devastating than the geographic rule. Stay with us. Just when it seemed the geographic requirement was devastating enough, King Charles introduced a second rule that cut even sharper. Only the children of active working royals will maintain their place in the line of succession. Can you imagine how precisely this targets the Sussex situation? Because Harry and Meghan made their choice in 2020. They stepped back from royal duties. They chose freedom over royal responsibility. They declared they wanted financial independence and privacy. And now, years later, that choice has come full circle. Their children no longer fit the new system because their parents aren't working royals. Let me break down why this requirement matters so much. A working royal is someone who performs official duties on behalf of the crown, represents the monarchy at events and engagements, serves in patronages and charitable roles under royal authority, receives funding from the sovereign grant or other official sources, lives under palace guidance, and follows institutional protocols. Harry and Meghan meet exactly 0 of these criteria. They perform no official duties, they do private appearances for money, not royal service. Represent only themselves, not the monarchy. Have no official royal patronages anymore. Receive no royal funding, they're financially independent, as they demanded. Reject palace guidance and institutional protocols entirely. So by any definition, Harry and Meghan are not working royals. They're private citizens who happen to have royal bloodline. Can you see the logic here? The line of succession is about ensuring continuity of service to the nation. It's about having people ready to take on constitutional roles if needed. But if your parents aren't serving the monarchy, if they've rejected royal duties, if they've chosen private life over public service, why should their children be in line for roles requiring exactly that service? The succession isn't a hereditary celebrity status system. It's a constitutional framework for ensuring the monarchy can function. And children being raised by non-working royals with no understanding of royal duty or service don't belong in that framework. This rule is particularly brutal in its timing because Harry and Meghan can't undo their decision to step back. They announced in 2020 that they were leaving royal duties. That happened. It's historical fact. And now, years later, after they've built their entire California life and brand around being private citizens, King Charles has made their own choice disqualifying for their children. Can you imagine the rage Meghan must feel? She thought she was making a power move, leaving the institution while keeping the titles and status. She thought she could have independence and royal relevance simultaneously. But King Charles has made clear, you can't. If you're not working for the crown, your children don't benefit from succession status. Period. Even if Harry wanted to return to royal duties to restore his children's succession status, it's too late. Because 1. The palace has made clear he's not welcome back as a working royal. That bridge is burned. 2. Meghan would never allow it. Her brand is built on having escaped the palace. 3. William reportedly would block any attempt at Harry returning to official duties. 4. The public wouldn't accept it after years of Sussex attacks on the institution. So there's no pathway for Harry and Meghan to suddenly become working royals again, which means their children are permanently excluded under this requirement. Let's compare Archie and Lilibet to their cousins. William and Kate's children. Parents are full-time working royals performing hundreds of engagements per year. Children being raised under direct royal supervision. They clearly meet the working royal parent requirement. The children of non-working royals like Princess Anne's children or Prince Edward's children, their parents made similar choices to be less prominent, and their children don't have succession status or royal titles. The system is being applied consistently. Can you see how this works? The rule isn't specifically targeting the Sussexes. It's just formalizing what has always been the practical reality. Children of working royals get succession consideration. Children of private citizens don't, even if those private citizens have royal blood. Behind palace doors, advisors describe these changes as a structural update, a clean, organized way to slim down the monarchy and protect its future. And that's exactly right. The monarchy has been bloated with people tangentially connected to the institution, but not actually serving it. King Charles has long wanted to slim down to a core of working royals who actively contribute. These new requirements formalize that vision. They create a clear line. If you're working for the crown, you and your children are part of the institution. If you're not, you and your children are private citizens. But in Montecito, sources say it felt like something else entirely. A quiet punishment. A stripping away of the last thread connecting Meghan's family to the crown. A reminder that decisions have consequences. Can you hear what the palace is really saying through these rule changes? You wanted independence? You have it. Complete independence. Including independence from succession status, from royal support, from the institutional benefits you were trying to keep while rejecting the responsibilities. You chose freedom over duty? Fine. But your children don't get to benefit from a system their parents rejected. You left the institution? Then you're out. Completely. No half measures. No trying to keep one foot in while building a separate life. It's a brutal message, but it's also perfectly logical. And that's what makes it so difficult for Meghan to fight. Let me ask you, should children of people who quit royal duties still get succession status? Or is King Charles right that you can't have it both ways? Comment your thoughts. Because we're about to examine the third move the palace has made, the formal clarity review that's examining every detail of how Archie and Lilibet came into this world. When we come back, we're looking at the constitutional experts investigating the Sussex children's births and why this review terrifies Meghan more than any rule change. Stay with us. Just when it seemed the rule changes were devastating enough, another move emerged from inside the palace. This one quieter, colder, and far more unsettling, a formal clarity review. Normally, these reviews are simple checkups. Small teams verifying paperwork or updating records behind the scenes. Routine administrative work that nobody outside the palace ever hears about. But this one was different from the start. Can you imagine the significance? According to insiders, the people assigned to this review weren't just office staff or archivists. They were constitutional experts, legal advisors, historians, and palace officials specializing in succession law. That combination only appears when something is seriously disputed or when a situation holds long-term constitutional consequences for the crown. The review's focus: everything connected to Harry, Meghan, and their children. Specifically, birth documentation for both Archie and Lilibet, medical confirmations that should exist but may not, paperwork that should have moved automatically through royal channels but didn't, timelines surrounding the births and how they compare to official announcements, eligibility requirements that were never properly tested before, constitutional compliance with succession law requirements. Can you see what this means? The palace is essentially auditing whether Archie and Lilibet's births meet the constitutional standards required for legitimate succession placement. This isn't a hostile investigation. The palace maintains it simply ensuring all documentation is in order. But it's thorough, detailed, and methodical. The kind of review that slowly removes anything uncertain and reveals anything that doesn't add up. Of all the moves the palace has made, sources say this is the one that has Meghan most panicked. Because rule changes can be challenged in court. Geographic and working royal requirements can be argued about publicly. But a documentation review? That's about facts. About whether the official story matches the actual paperwork. About whether the births happened the way they were claimed to have happened. And if there are discrepancies, if the timeline doesn't work, if medical documentation doesn't exist, if the official announcements don't match hospital records, then this review will find them. Can you imagine if the review discovers what investigators like DL have claimed? That the births didn't happen the way they were publicly announced? That surrogacy was used but never disclosed? That constitutional requirements for documenting royal births weren't actually met? That wouldn't just be embarrassing. That would be grounds for completely removing the children from succession on the basis that their births don't meet constitutional legitimacy standards. The fact that constitutional experts are involved tells us how seriously the palace is taking this. These aren't people who review routine paperwork. These are scholars who understand the intricate legal requirements for royal succession. They know that succession law requires verifiable birth documentation, clear maternal connection, proper medical witnessing, compliance with disclosure requirements if assisted reproduction was used, official crown recognition of the births. And they're now examining whether Archie and Lilibet's births meet all of those requirements. If they don't, if there are gaps in documentation, inconsistencies in timelines, or evidence that requirements weren't met, the constitutional experts will document those failures. And those. Can you imagine the constitutional crisis if this review finds that the births don't meet succession requirements? The palace would have legal grounds to formally remove the children from the line of succession entirely, not just deprioritize them, but actually remove them on the basis that constitutional birth documentation requirements weren't satisfied. That would be devastating for several reasons. 1. It would validate every conspiracy theory about the Sussex births that Meghan has dismissed as racist attacks. 2. It would prove that Harry and Meghan deceived the public about fundamental facts regarding their children. 3. It would potentially expose surrogacy arrangements that were deliberately hidden in violation of UK disclosure laws. 4. It would permanently eliminate any possibility of the children ever being considered royal heirs. What makes this review so effective is its quiet, methodical nature. There are no public announcements, no dramatic revelations, no press conferences, just constitutional experts systematically examining documents, comparing timelines, verifying claims, and documenting where official stories don't match official records. Can you see how much more powerful this is than public feuding? The palace isn't arguing with Meghan. They're not trading accusations. They're just checking whether the paperwork supports the claims. And if it doesn't, that speaks for itself. Unlike the rule changes, which Meghan might try to challenge in court, she has no grounds to stop an internal palace documentation review. The palace has every right to verify that succession records are accurate. Meghan can't claim it's discriminatory. The palace would review any succession placement if questions arose about birth documentation. She can't claim it's invasion of privacy. Succession records are constitutional documents that require accuracy. She can't prevent the review from happening. It's internal palace business that she has no authority over. So all Meghan can do is wait and hope that whatever documentation gaps exist don't get discovered, and pray that the review doesn't find evidence of what many investigators already suspect, that the official birth stories don't match the actual facts. Let me ask you, should the palace verify that children in the succession line were actually born the way the public was told? Or is this review an inappropriate invasion? Comment your thoughts, because we're about to examine Prince William's role in all of this, and why sources say he's the one pushing for the harshest possible approach to the Sussex situation. When we come back, we're looking at William as the enforcer, the future king who's willing to cut off his own brother's children to protect the institution. Stay with us. As the monarchy tightens its rules and conducts its reviews, another force rises behind the scenes: Prince William. For years, he stood quietly in the background, learning from his grandmother, watching his father prepare for the crown, studying every political storm the monarchy survived. But now, insiders say William has stepped into a far more decisive role. He is no longer simply the future king waiting his turn. He is becoming the protector of the institution, the enforcer of its standards, the one willing to make hard choices that others might shy away from. Can you imagine the transformation? William used to be the peacemaker, the one trying to mediate between Harry and the family, the one hoping reconciliation might be possible. But sources say that version of William is gone, replaced by someone with little patience for anything that threatens the stability of the family or the legacy he's set to inherit. After years of public drama from Harry and Meghan, interviews, accusations, explosive documentaries, books attacking the family, William's tolerance has worn completely thin. He is described by sources as firm, focused, and completely unwilling to bend on matters of institutional protection. According to those familiar with palace discussions, William is prepared to make hard choices, including supporting the removal of titles and succession status if doing so protects the monarchy's long-term future. One advisor put it bluntly: William will cut a limb to save the body. And he doesn't see this as vengeance. He sees it as responsibility. Can you see the difference in approach? Charles might hesitate to take the harshest actions against his own grandchildren. He might hope for eventual reconciliation. He might be willing to leave some doors open. But William? Sources say he views the Sussex situation as a threat that needs to be neutralized completely. Not out of personal anger, but out of institutional duty. Several factors have driven William's increasingly tough stance. William's primary concern is his own children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. They are the future of the monarchy, and he will not allow uncertainty or instability from the Sussex branch to threaten their futures. If Archie and Lilibet remain ambiguously in the succession, it creates confusion about who actually has legitimate claims. That confusion could create constitutional problems decades from now. So William wants clear rules that definitively establish his children's primacy and definitively exclude Sussex children who don't meet institutional requirements. William reportedly feels deeply betrayed by how Harry has behaved. Not just the decision to leave, but the constant public attacks, the monetization of family drama, the weaponization of private conversations. Every time William has tried to maintain some relationship with Harry, that relationship has been exploited for content. Private conversations end up in books. Family dynamics get discussed in interviews. Can you imagine trying to maintain trust with someone who treats every interaction as potential material for their next media project? William has learned that Harry can't be trusted, and that extends to trusting Harry's children in the succession. William understands that as long as Meghan is in the picture, reconciliation with Harry is impossible, and he sees Meghan as fundamentally opposed to the institution's interests. So rather than hoping Meghan's influence will eventually wane, William is taking the position that the institution needs to protect itself from her completely. That means excluding her children from succession status, from royal titles, from any meaningful connection to the monarchy. William takes his responsibility as future king extraordinarily seriously. He's studied how monarchies fall when they allow instability to fester. He's learned from history that institutions survive by enforcing standards consistently. And he's determined that on his watch, the monarchy will not be weakened by making exceptions for people who attack it while trying to benefit from it. Sources say William has been instrumental in pushing for the geographic and working royal requirements. Charles might have been inclined toward softer language or more ambiguous standards. But William insisted the rules be clear, objective, and strictly enforced. He wanted requirements that would definitively exclude the Sussex children while being legally defensible. Can you see his strategic thinking? Create rules that appear neutral, but that the Sussex family can't possibly meet given their choices. Make those rules constitutional requirements that can't be challenged as arbitrary or personal. That's not emotional revenge. That's cold, calculated institutional protection. Perhaps most devastatingly, sources say William no longer sees Harry as his brother in any meaningful sense. The betrayals have been too extensive. The bridges have been burned too thoroughly. William reportedly views Harry now as someone who chose to leave the family and institution, who chose Meghan over his own blood relatives, who chose celebrity and money over duty and service. And William believes that when you make those choices, you face the consequences of those choices, including having your children excluded from the institution you rejected. That advisor's quote, "William will cut a limb to save the body," perfectly captures his approach. He's willing to sever completely his relationship with Harry, if that's what protecting the institution requires. He's willing to ensure his niece and nephew are excluded from royal status, if that's what protecting his own children's futures requires. He's willing to be seen as cold or harsh, if that's what maintaining institutional integrity requires. Can you imagine having that level of commitment to duty over personal relationship? Most people would struggle to cut off their brother's children. But William sees it as his responsibility to protect the institution, even at enormous personal cost. There's a poetic justice to what's happening. Harry chose freedom over royal duty. William chose duty over personal preference. Harry chose Meghan's demands over institutional requirements. William chose institutional protection over family harmony.